sure what I'm discovering, but I'm learning a lot. And I keep seeking, and I keep going to classes, and I keep learning more and more stuff. I work in San Francisco. I've been seeing patients for 17 years or more. I really come at this from the clinician's perspective. The whole industry of cannabis is just like amazing. It kind of blows me away, everything that's going on. But my head is in a little bit of a different place with it. When I read statistics that say, 1 in 10 adults uses cannabis regularly, and I say, wow, 1 in 10 people are using cannabis regularly, that means they're showing up in my office, and they're showing up in the offices of all the other physicians, and most people aren't talking about it. And they're not talking, and their physicians don't really know much about it. And acupuncturists who are also licensed herbalists in California and probably have more hours and more education in herbalism than anybody else still kind of don't talk about it. So it's time we talk about it. So I have been investigating it from that perspective. And I first set out a few years ago, looking into the history of cannabis in Chinese medicine. I thought, wow, this is an herb. We must use it in Chinese medicine. How come we didn't learn it in school? So in school we learned about the cannabis seeds. That was part of our pharmacopoeia. That was in our herb room, and the seeds are good for constipation, and that's kind of what it was used for. And lots of students were smoking weed then. It was a long time ago, so there was no vaping.
Did you mention it was vape? It was Berkeley.
It was Oakland, but yeah, same. Berkeley was underwet. Yeah. And I still thought, wow, this has to be somewhere in Chinese medicine. And I really couldn't find much, even on the internet. Now, maybe a year ago I went back on the internet, and over these months I keep going on, and it's starting to find out what the ancient stuff was. And yes, indeed, it is in the old information. And it was considered a powerful herb in ancient times, and one of the most powerful herbs, and also a rarely used herb. So I thought, that's interesting, rarely used, and why? Because it's so powerful, right? And now, what we've cultivated as far as being able to get really high THC, it's probably even more powerful. So one of my goals is to help people to use this really wonderful gift, this powerful herb, this medicine. There's so much medicine in this plant, but to see if we can learn how to use it optimally, to really optimize it. In Chinese medicine, we almost never use herbs as a single herb. Rarely. Some herbs we use as a single herb, but usually an herbalist in Chinese medicine gives a patient a formula, and everybody's formula is a little bit different. It's very individualized. One of the things that's fascinating to me about this herb is that when you study the plant, it's almost like a formula inside the plant. The more we learn about this plant, we learn that this whole plant has things inside of it that balance it out. So as an herbalist, we might look at the THC as being hot and toxic. And when we see people using a lot of high THC strains, sometimes we see health issues that are associated with too much what we would call in Chinese medicine as hot toxic. Could be skin breakouts, it could be sore throats, it could be a lot of dryness in the system. But if you look at the whole plant before it had so much THC cultivated, there's that beautiful CBD in there. And since CBD is anti-inflammatory, just maybe that's a cold herb. So as Chinese medicine practitioners, we look at every herb and we classify the tastes of it, the smells of it, all these properties. So we use those kinds of words like hot and cold and toxic and smells, we call aromatic, but now we're learning about all these terpenes in the plant, right? So there's just all this medicine is all there. So it's just very interesting to me now. So we've learned how to separate these medicines out, and now we're combining them back together, right? So we're making formulas again. That's mostly where my mind is going on this. some acupuncturists, particularly one who's here in Marin, John Minnie, has done the most work, I think, on this as an acupuncturist. He's published a big fat book, and he called it Marijuana Syndromes. So he identifies all of these syndromes that happen with marijuana use. So we have all these great things, all this good medicine that can be had in marijuana, but he also identifies all these places of caution. And I think that's important as educators in cannabis, that we keep educating each other, so we can keep educating our patients, again, to optimize the use. So when we see dry eyes, when we see somebody getting bronchitis 3 times or 4 times a year when they didn't used to, when we see dry vagina, just like dry mouth, it means something's a little unbalanced, and we need to work with that. And we can work with that with other herbs, we can work with it with foods, we can work with it by changing the CBD to THC ratio, you know, all these things. The other thing on this same path is dosing. That was one of the things I was after when I went to the first conference I went to in Arcata months ago. I wanted to learn about dosing. I thought, wow, like, this medicine is just available to everybody now, at least here. You know, it's available. It's available for pain. It's available for all sorts of things. But if my MD gave me a prescription for an anti-anxiety, maybe like Xanax or a painkiller, I wouldn't be able to just go to the store and get as many painkillers as I wanted, as often as I wanted, in whatever dose I wanted. So, like, how are we going to work with this? I do find that this is kind of a medicine of the people. You know, the people are teaching their practitioners, not really the other way around. And I don't know that the people have done any worse than the doctors have.
Right.
Arguably better. I mean, I don't know. But when I went to Arcata, Dr. Dustin Sulak gave a really nice talk about dosing, and that most of you guys know this stuff. And he talked about, you know, start low, go slow, and don't be afraid to go all the way.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really interesting. You know, for some people it's microdose, a tiny bit, and some people need a lot. And it all depends on what we're working with. You know, we're working with a child that's having seizures 6 times an hour, and we need to keep dosing and dosing and dosing until we find that sweet spot, and that's the way we do it. We're working with anxiety and depression. Maybe it's little microdoses throughout the day. One of the things that John Minnie said, the acupuncturist who's here in Tiburon, which I thought was really brilliant, was he said to pay very close attention to what the medicine is telling you. So there are people who are new to the medicine, or not even new to the medicine, old with the medicine, have just gotten used to it, just to stop and pause and pay attention. So, you know, the guy Dave on the couch probably was watching a movie and not really paying attention. But if we can do a little qigong, or get out in nature, or take a walk, or get quiet and listen, the medicine might tell us what's happening. The medicine, I think, in Chinese medicine terms, we would call it an adaptogen, because it goes to different places. And it seems to help all sorts of stuff. And I think it does help all sorts of stuff. And at the same time, this is my yin-yang Chinese medicine training all the time, anything that's a panacea completely, I want to stop and pay attention, to really pay attention to that medicine. And it will tell us probably when the dose is right. And it will start fixing our headache or our insomnia or our anxiety or whatever it is. But when we start getting out of balance with the medicine, or if we take too much of the medicine, all those things it was helping might start getting worse. So we may find this helping, hurting. We may find, oh, it's fixing things. Oh, now it's going to my weak spots. Oh, now my back is feeling worse. You know, now I feel achy. So we just need to really pay attention. I think if people find a good acupuncturist or herbalist or practitioner who's wise and educated and grounded, they could be a good guide, almost like a shaman, to help with the medicine. I had a friend the other day who I hadn't seen in a very long time, and he was telling me how he, right when he'd gone through this long court battle and he won custody of his kids and all the stress that was building up, he went on a bender and he drank a lot at some conference. And there was a student who was assigned to him. This student was assigned to him to watch him. And he used to tell me how great it was because he had somebody mirror him all the time, and he was safe, and somebody was listening to him and could hear what was going on. She was like his little shaman at his side. I'm going to take questions now.